My grandmother's last words weren't "I love you" or "goodbye." They were "Don't let them choose you for the severance." I was 12 years old, holding her papery hand in the hospice room that smelled like disinfectant and dying flowers. My parents stood on the other side of the bed, and when Grandma spoke those words, I watched my father's face turn the color of old bone. My mother looked away, suddenly fascinated by the IV drip. "Mom, please," my father whispered. "She doesn't need to know. Not yet." But Grandma squeezed my hand with surprising strength for someone an hour from death. Her eyes rheumy and faded, but still sharp, still seeing things the rest of us couldn't lock onto mine. "Maya," she rasped. "When you turn 25, they'll come. The family will gather. And if the signs point to you, you'll have to decide. Remember, the tradition keeps us safe. It keeps us prosperous. But the cost..." She coughed a wet, rattling sound. "The cost is always paid in blood and memory." "That's enough," my father said, his voice hard in a way I'd never heard before. "You're scaring her." "Good," Grandma said. "She should be scared. Fear might save her." She died 17 minutes later, and my parents never spoke of it again. When I asked about the severance, my father said Grandma had been confused at the end, the morphine making her delirious. My mother just smiled, that tight smile she always wore at family gatherings, and changed the subject. I believed them, or at least I wanted to. 13 years later, 3 days after my 25th birthday, I received an envelope in the mail. Heavy cream paper, my name written in calligraphy. No return address. Inside a single card with gold embossed lettering, "The Severance Gathering. You are summoned. June 21st. The family requires your presence." Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive into this nightmare, I need to ask, do you come from a family with strange traditions? Drop a comment with where you're watching from and the weirdest thing your family does. Because I promise you, nothing compares to what the Chen family has been hiding for 14 generations. If you're enjoying this dive into ancestral horror, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and settle in. This story gets darker than you can imagine. And trust me, by the end, you'll understand why some family secrets should stay buried. I grew up thinking my family was normal. We lived in a modest colonial in Lexington, Massachusetts. My father, David Chen, was a tax attorney. My mother, Patricia, taught piano lessons from our converted garage. We had a golden retriever named Biscuit. We went to the Unitarian Church on Sundays not out of devotion, but because it was what respectable suburban families did. But there were always hints. Small things I noticed but didn't understand. The family reunions happened like clockwork every 5 years, always on the summer solstice. Not Christmas, not Thanksgiving. The solstice specifically. The entire Chen family would converge on my great-uncle's estate in Vermont, a sprawling property with a main house built in 1823 and several outbuildings that were kept locked year-round. Attendance wasn't optional. When I was 16, I'd gotten into a prestigious summer arts program in California. My parents said no without explanation. "You have to be at the gathering," my father said. "It's not negotiable." I'd gone bitter and resentful and spent the weekend watching the adults disappear into the locked barn for hours at a time, while the children and teenagers were kept busy with awkward games and supervised activities. When the adults emerged, they looked exhausted, drained. Some were crying, but no one talked about it. The Chen family was large, 43 members across 4 generations when I was growing up. We were successful, almost uniformly so. Doctors, lawyers, professors, entrepreneurs. My Uncle Richard owned a tech company worth $200 million. My cousin Jennifer was a federal judge. Aunt Susan ran a chain of boutique hotels. We were successful and we were lucky. That's what everyone said. The Chens have always been lucky. But luck has a price. I moved to Brooklyn after college, got a job at a non-profit, and dated a string of men who my mother politely called artistically inclined, and my father called unemployable. I saw my family at obligatory holidays, suffered through the quinquennial gatherings, and lived my life as far from the Chen family orbit as I could manage while still maintaining plausible deniability that I wasn't actively avoiding them. 3 days after I turned 25, the envelope arrived. I was in my studio apartment, a 4th floor walk-up in Bushwick that cost $1,900 a month and had a bathroom the size of a coffin. I'd just gotten home from work, exhausted from a donor meeting that had gone nowhere. The envelope was on the floor, slipped under my door. That should have been my first warning. The building had a locked entrance. No one should have been able to reach my door without being buzzed in. I opened the envelope and read the card 3 times, trying to make sense of it. The Severance gathering. You are summoned. I called my father. He answered on the first ring, which was unusual. My father never answered on the first ring. You got the summons, he said. Not a question. A statement. What is this, Dad? What's the severance? A long pause. I heard my mother's voice in the background, high and worried. Is it Maya? Oh God, is it Maya? You need to come home, my father said. Tonight. We need to talk about this in person. Just tell me what's going on. Not on the phone, Maya. Never on the phone. The family has rules about this. His voice dropped lower. Pack a bag. You might need to stay for a while. And Maya, don't tell anyone where you're going. Not your roommate. Not your boyfriend. No one outside the family can know. I don't have a roommate or a boyfriend right now. Good, he said, and there was something in his voice, relief, fear. That makes it easier. Come home, we'll explain everything. He hung up before I could argue. I took the Amtrak to Boston, then an Uber to my childhood home in Lexington. The 30-minute drive from South Station gave me too much time to think, to remember all the little oddities I'd dismissed over the years. Like how no Chen ever married outside the family's approval. My cousin Marcus had been engaged to a woman he'd met in medical school, brilliant kind from a good family. The wedding was called off 2 weeks before the ceremony. Marcus refused to talk about it. He married someone else 6 months later, a woman from a family my parents called appropriate. I'd always assumed there was some kind of prenup drama or cultural issue, or how my great-aunt Lily had disappeared when I was 8. Just gone, no explanation. When I asked my mother where Aunt Lily went, she'd said she chose differently. I'd thought it meant divorce or moving abroad. But the way she'd said it, like those 2 words explained everything, had stuck with me. My parents were waiting in the living room. The piano was closed. Biscuit's dog bed was empty. He'd died 2 years ago, and they hadn't gotten another dog. The house felt hollow, staged like a model home with all the personal touches removed. "Sit down, sweetheart," my mother said. She'd aged since I'd last seen her at Christmas. New lines around her eyes. Gray at her temples she wasn't bothering to cover anymore. I sat. Someone better start talking. My father opened a wooden box on the coffee table, antique mahogany Chinese characters carved into the lid. Inside were documents. Old documents, some on paper so brittle it looked like it would crumble if touched. Others were newer, but still decades old. The Chen family came to America in 1847, my father began. Your great-great-great-great-grandfather, Chen Wei. He was a merchant brought over during the gold rush. But he wasn't looking for gold. He was running from something. He pulled out a document, a contract of some kind written in Chinese characters with an English translation clipped to it. In China, our family made a deal, a pact with something old. Something that existed before Buddhism, before Taoism, before any of the organized religions. The villagers called it the devourer of offerings. Chen Wei's family was starving. Drought had killed their crops for 3 years. They were desperate. "Dad, this sounds like a fairy tale." "Let him finish," my mother said sharply. My father continued. Chen Wei's grandfather performed a ritual, offered the devourer something precious in exchange for prosperity. The ritual worked. The rains came. The family prospered. But the devourer doesn't give without taking. Every generation, one family member must make the severance, must give up what they love most. Memory, identity, relationships, something fundamental to who they are. That person serves as a vessel maintaining the pact. I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You're telling me our family success is because great-great-great-great-grandpa made a deal with a demon?" "Not a demon," my mother said. "Demons are Christian constructs. This is older. It doesn't have a name in English. But yes, essentially, that's what happened." "And you believe this?" My parents exchanged a look. My father reached into the box and pulled out a photograph. Black and white, dated 1973. It showed a family gathering. I recognized the Vermont estate in the background. "This is your grandmother when she was your age," he said, pointing to a young woman in the center. "And this is her sister, Lily." I looked closer. The woman labeled as Lily looked familiar. Very familiar. Wait, that's Great Aunt Lily, the one who disappeared when I was 8. Look at the date, Maya. 1973. 52 years ago. If Lily was in her 20s, then she'd be in her 70s now. I don't understand. Lily was chosen for the Severance in 1973, my mother explained. She served for 35 years. When you were 8, her service ended. She was released. But the severance takes its toll. She had no memory of her life before. No memory of the family of who she'd been. We set her up in a care facility in Oregon. She lives there, still happy but empty. A stranger in her own life. My skin prickled. You're saying Aunt Lily lost 35 years of her life and all her memories because of some ritual. She maintained the pact. Because of her sacrifice, the family prospered. Your Uncle Richard's company succeeded. Your cousin Jennifer was appointed to the bench. Your father's firm became one of the most respected in Boston. We're successful because someone pays the price. I stood up, my hands shaking. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Every 5 years on the summer solstice, the family gathers, my father said. We perform the ritual that determines who the next vessel will be. Signs and portents. The devourer makes its preference known, and the chosen one must decide accept the severance and maintain the family's prosperity or refuse and break the pact. What happens if someone refuses? The silence that followed was answer enough. Finally, my mother spoke. The last person to refuse was in 1923. Your great-grandfather's brother, Thomas. He refused the severance. 3 months later, the entire family lost everything. The stock market crash hit us early and hard. Thomas's wife died in childbirth. His son died of influenza. The family's import business collapsed. Within a year, 6 family members were dead, and the rest were destitute. Until someone else accepted, my father added. Your great-grandfather's sister volunteered. She served until 1958. By then, the family had rebuilt. We were prosperous again. And now it's my turn. I felt sick. That's what Grandma was warning me about. The summer solstice is in 2 weeks, my father said. The gathering will happen. The ritual will be performed. The devourer will make its choice. We don't know for certain it will be you. But you're the right age. You're unattached. You have no children. Historically, those are the signs it looks for. Fuck that, I said, standing up. I'm not doing this. I'm not giving up my life for some ancient superstition. Maya, no. This is crazy. You're all crazy. I'm leaving. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. My mother's voice stopped me. If you leave now, if you don't attend the gathering, you'll be considered a refusal. The pact will break, and everyone in the family will suffer. Not just us. Your cousins, your uncles and aunts, your second cousins. 43 people, Maya. 43 people whose lives will collapse because you refuse to even consider the possibility. I turned back. My mother was crying. My father looked like he'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. You don't have to accept, he said quietly. You just have to attend. Listen. See the ritual. Then make an informed choice. That's all we're asking. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of that house, to block my parents' numbers, to disappear into New York and never look back. But I thought of my cousin Jennifer's kids, of Uncle Richard's wife who'd survived breast cancer last year, of all the people who'd just be living their lives unaware that my choice could destroy them. 2 weeks, I said. I'll go to the gathering, but I'm not promising anything else. My father nodded. That's all we can ask. The next 2 weeks were a blur of research and dread. I couldn't work. I called in sick for 3 days straight, then took a week of vacation time. My boss wasn't happy, but I didn't care. I had bigger problems than donor relations and grant proposals. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. The documents my father had shown me were just the beginning. He gave me access to the family archive boxes of papers stored in the basement, ranging from Chen Wei's original immigration documents to letters, journals, and photographs spanning 14 generations. I read everything. Chen Wei had indeed fled China in 1847, but not just because of economic opportunity. According to his journal translated by my grandfather in the 1960s, the devourer had begun demanding more. What had started as a simple offering of rice and incense had evolved into something darker. Chen Wei's own mother had served as a vessel for 20 years, and by the end, she'd been something less than human. A hollow thing that breathed and ate, but had no light behind her eyes. Chen Wei brought the pact to America, hoping the distance would weaken it. It didn't. The devourer followed, adapting to the new world. The rituals changed slightly, incorporating elements of the new culture, but the core remained. Every generation, someone was chosen. Every generation, someone paid. I found records of all of them, 1847 to 1869. Chen Wei's sister, May, served 22 years. Died 3 days after her release, her body simply giving out. 1869 to 1891. A cousin whose name had been struck from the records. Refused initially, then accepted after his daughter fell ill. Served 22 years. No record of what happened after. 1891 to 1918. Another cousin. Served 27 years. Released during the Spanish flu pandemic. Caught the flu within a week and died. 1918 to 1923, no one. This was the gap where Thomas had refused and the family had collapsed. 1923 to 1958, Great Aunt Sarah, my great-grandfather's sister, served 35 years. Lived another decade after release, but never spoke again. 1958 to 1973. A second cousin I'd never heard of. Served 15 years. Released and immediately moved to Alaska. Cut all ties with the family. 1973 to 2008, Great Aunt Lily. Served 35 years. Currently in a memory care facility, not recognizing her own children. 2008 present, my cousin Marcus. I nearly dropped the journal when I read that last entry. Marcus, the one whose engagement had been mysteriously called off. Marcus, who'd become a successful cardiac surgeon. Marcus, who'd seemed distracted and distant at every family gathering for the past 17 years. Marcus was currently serving as the vessel. I called him. He answered on the third ring, his voice tired. Maya, I wondered when you'd call. Why didn't you tell me? Because the chosen don't talk about it. That's part of the deal. You serve in silence. You maintain the pact. You don't burden others with the knowledge of what it costs. What does it cost, Marcus? What actually happens during the severance? A long pause. I heard hospital sounds in the background, beeping monitors, overhead pages. You forget how to feel, he said finally. Not immediately. It's gradual. Over the first year, emotions start to fade. Happiness, sadness, fear, love, they become concepts you understand intellectually but can't experience. Food loses its taste. Music becomes just sound. Colors dim. You become a ghost in your own life, going through motions, because the ritual requires you to maintain appearances to continue living, but nothing means anything anymore. Jesus Christ, Marcus. The pact requires a vessel who's present but absent, someone who can maintain the connection between the family and the devourer without being distracted by their own desires or needs. You become a conduit, empty, hollow, and in exchange, the family prospers. Everyone you love succeeds, except you. You stop loving. You stop everything. Why did you accept? because I saw what happened when someone refused. I read the records just like you're doing now. I couldn't let that happen. And honestly, Maya, part of me was relieved. I'd always felt like I was going through life wrong, like I was supposed to feel more than I did. Turns out I was right. Now I feel nothing at all, and at least I understand why. How much longer do you have to serve? My term should end this solstice. 17 years. That's the average. The devourer keeps a vessel until it's ready for a new one. And according to the signs, according to what the family elders have been observing, it's ready. Which means someone new will be chosen. And Maya, you fit the profile perfectly. After I hung up with Marcus, I couldn't sleep. I spent the night researching everything I could find about ancient Chinese folk religions, about pacts and demons, and things that existed before organized religion. Most of it was useless academic papers and Wikipedia entries. But I found one message board for people dealing with ancestral curses. Most of the posts were clearly fictional or delusional, but one caught my attention. A user named Severance Survivor had posted, "If your family has a multi-generational pact with an entity, there are only 3 ways out. Fulfill the contract terms, impossible if it's perpetual. Find a stronger entity to break it, extremely dangerous, or die before being chosen coward's way." I chose option 2, cost me everything, but I'm free. DM if you're serious. I DM'd them immediately. The response came 6 hours later. Chen family, Vermont estate. Summer solstice gatherings. Yeah, I know your situation. My family had something similar. Different entity, same structure. I can help. But you need to know breaking these pacts doesn't end them. It just transfers the cost. Someone still pays. The question is whether you're willing to make someone else pay instead of yourself. We arranged a video call for the next day. Severance Survivor turned out to be a woman in her 40s named Diane Wu. She was calling from what looked like a studio apartment, multiple locks visible on the door behind her. "I'm going to be direct," she said. "Your family's pact is with what my grandmother would have called a chi devourer. It feeds on life force, on potential. Every person in your family produces a certain amount of chi life energy. The pact siphons a small percentage from everyone and funnels it through a vessel into the devourer. In exchange, the devourer manipulates probabilities in your family's favor. Good luck, good health, good outcomes." How did you break your family's pact? I didn't break it. I redirected it. Found another family willing to take it on. They were desperate, facing bankruptcy, illness, bad luck that had plagued them for generations. I offered them a deal: take our pact, get the prosperity, accept the cost. They agreed. The entity accepted the transfer. My family was released. And the other family, they're paying now. Someone among them is serving as a vessel. Their luck turned around immediately. But I try not to think about what I did to them. Survival isn't pretty. I can't do that, I said. I can't destroy another family to save mine. Then you have 2 choices: serve as the vessel yourself or refuse and watch your family collapse. There's no third option. These entities don't negotiate. They don't release voluntarily. They feed or they rage. What if I just ran? What if I disappeared before the gathering? They'd choose someone else. Probably someone younger. Maybe one of your teenage cousins. The devourer prefers willing vessels, but it will take unwilling ones if necessary. and an unwilling vessel suffers more. At least if you accept willingly, the emptying is gradual. If you're chosen against your will, the hollowing is immediate and violent. After the call, I sat in my childhood bedroom unchanged since high school, posters of bands I no longer listened to on the walls, and cried. Not elegant crying, ugly, snotty, desperate crying. Every option was horrific. I called my best friend Jessica, breaking my father's rule about not telling anyone outside the family. I needed to talk to someone sane. "So, your family is in a cult," Jessica said, after I'd explained everything, leaving out the supernatural elements, just framing it as an abusive family tradition. "And they want you to basically sacrifice your happiness for their benefit. Maya, you need to just not go. Block their numbers. Let them deal with their own shit." It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You don't owe them anything. You didn't ask to be born into this family. You didn't sign any contract. Their bad decisions aren't your responsibility. She was right. Logically, rationally, she was completely right. But she didn't know the full truth. She didn't know that refusing would actually tangibly hurt people. That this wasn't just emotional manipulation, it was real. The pact was real. The consequences were real. "I have to at least go to the gathering," I said. "See what actually happens, then decide." "Promise me you'll leave if it gets weird," Jessica said. "Promise me you won't let them guilt you into something you'll regret forever." I promised. It was a lie. The night before the gathering, my father drove me to Vermont. My mother stayed home. She never attended the severance rituals. "I can't watch," she'd told me years ago, and now I understood why. The Vermont estate looked the same as always. Big farmhouse, rolling hills, the barn standing alone near the edge of the property. Cars filled the driveway and lined the road the whole family had assembled. Inside, my relatives greeted me with hugs and the usual small talk, but there was a tension underneath. Everyone was watching me, evaluating. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked relieved, better me than them, their eyes said. Marcus was there, looking exactly as he always did. Handsome, professional, empty. He nodded at me across the room. At 10 p.m., the elders, Uncle Richard, Aunt Susan, my father, and 3 others from the senior generation called everyone to attention. "The Severance gathering begins at midnight," Uncle Richard announced. "Maya, you'll need to prepare. The rest of you assemble in the barn at 11:45. Prepare. What did that even mean? Aunt Susan approached me carrying a white robe. "You'll wear this, then come to the barn. Whatever happens, remember, the choice is yours. We can't force you. The devourer only accepts willing vessels." I took the robe. It was heavier than it looked, the fabric strange silk, but wrong somehow. Older than it should be. 2 hours until midnight. 2 hours until I'd see exactly what my family had been hiding for 14 generations. The barn had been transformed. The farm equipment and hay bales were gone, revealing a space I'd never seen before, a hidden floor. Beneath the barn's regular floor, accessed by a trapdoor I'd never known existed. Stone steps led down into what could only be described as a temple. The underground chamber was circular, maybe 40 feet across. The walls were carved with Chinese characters and symbols I didn't recognize. Candles, hundreds of them, provided flickering light. In the center of the room stood a stone altar covered in offerings, fruits, rice tea, and something else. a photograph of Marcus. The entire family stood around the perimeter of the chamber. 43 people, all wearing white robes identical to mine, all silent. Uncle Richard stood at the altar. The Severance gathering is convened. Marcus Chen has served for 17 years. His term is complete. The Devourer requires a new vessel. We have gathered to witness the choosing and honor the tradition. He lit incense. The smell was overwhelming, sweet and rotten simultaneously. It made my head swim. The ritual requires 3 phases, Uncle Richard continued. First, the release. Marcus will be freed from his service. Second, the revealing. The Devourer will make its preference known. Third, the acceptance. The chosen one will decide their path. Marcus stepped forward to the altar. He looked calm, but I saw his hands trembling slightly, the first sign of emotion I'd seen from him in years. Uncle Richard began chanting in Chinese, Old Chinese, a dialect I didn't understand. The other elders joined in. The sound built echoing off the stone walls until it felt like the chamber itself was vibrating. The candles flickered. The air grew cold. Something changed in the room. I felt it before I saw it, a presence vast and ancient and hungry. It pressed down on us from all directions, from no direction, from somewhere that wasn't quite here. Marcus gasped. His body went rigid, back arching, and for a moment I saw something moving beneath his skin. Not physically, I saw it with some other sense I didn't know I had. Something dark and writhing was pulling out of him, leaving through his mouth, his eyes, his pores. He collapsed. When he looked up, his eyes were different. There was life in them again. Confusion, pain, fear, all the emotions he'd described losing flooded back at once. He started sobbing, great heaving sobs, and 2 cousins helped him to the side of the chamber. "The release is complete," Uncle Richard said. "Marcus Chen is freed. Now the revealing begins." He poured something onto the altar oil, maybe, or alcohol, and lit it. Flames roared up, blue and green, unnatural colors that hurt to look at. In the flames, images began to form. I saw myself. Not as I was now, but at different ages, a child learning to play piano, a teenager taking the SAT, a college student at graduation. The images flickered faster: me at my first job, me in my apartment, me on dates that hadn't worked out, me crying over my grandmother's death. The flames were showing my life, judging me, evaluating me. Then the flames shifted, showing other family members. My cousin Jennifer's daughter, Emily, who'd just turned 24. A second cousin I barely knew, Alex, who was 26. And my younger cousin, David, who was only 22. The flames cycled through us, narrowing options, eliminating possibilities. Finally, they settled. The image in the flames was clear. Me. "The Devourer has chosen," Uncle Richard said, his voice heavy. "Maya Chen. The signs are clear. You are the preferred vessel." I felt everyone's eyes on me, some sympathetic, some relieved, some just curious. "Maya," Uncle Richard continued, "you are not required to accept. The choice is yours, but you must make it now. The Devourer has shown its preference. If you refuse, it will choose another, perhaps one less suitable, perhaps one who will suffer more." or it may rage and break the pact entirely. We cannot know, but you can accept willingly serve your term and maintain the prosperity our family has known for 14 generations. How long? I asked. My voice sounded strange, distant. The terms vary, typically 15 to 35 years. You would be released before you're elderly. You would have time to recover to live again. 15 to 35 years. Half my life, potentially. Maybe more. What if I refuse right now? The silence was deafening. Finally, my father spoke. The pact breaks. The protection ends. Everything our family has built begins to crumble. But Maya, I want you to know I'll love you regardless of your choice. I won't force you. None of us will. I looked at Marcus still crying on the floor. I looked at my cousins, Jennifer's kids, Uncle Richard's grandchildren, all the people who'd grown up with the benefits of this pact without knowing the cost. Then I looked at the flames, at the image of myself waiting, and I understood something the others didn't seem to realize. The devourer didn't choose me because I'm suitable, I said slowly. It chose me because I figured it out, because I researched, because I learned what this really is. I walked to the altar. The flames didn't burn. I could feel that instinctively. They weren't physical fire. This isn't about luck or prosperity, I continued. It's about control. You feed it one person's entire life force, their potential, and in return, it manipulates minor probabilities for everyone else. But the equation doesn't balance. You're giving it one person's everything for 43 people's slight edge. It's not an equal trade. It never was. Uncle Richard's face paled. Maya, what are you? I accept, I said, but not on its terms. On mine. I reached into the flames and pulled. I didn't know I could do this. Maybe no one had ever tried, but I could feel the connection, the thread of energy running from the altar to every person in the room. And I pulled it all into myself at once. The chamber exploded with light and sound. I felt the devourer's shock, actual surprise from an ancient entity that had run this same ritual for centuries. It had never encountered resistance from inside the choosing. Every person in the room gasped as their connection to the pact severed. I felt it all flooding into me, not just the role of vessel, but the entire structure of the pact itself. And then I understood what I had to do. When the light faded, I was still standing, but I was also lying on the ground. I could see myself from two perspectives simultaneously through my own eyes and from somewhere else, somewhere vast and formless and ancient. I'd pulled the devourer into myself, but I'd also pulled myself into it. We were merged, tangled together in a way that shouldn't be possible. The family stared in horror. What did you do? My father whispered. I spoke, but the voice that came out was layered mine and something older underneath. The pact is changed. No more vessels. No more choosing. I am the conduit now. Permanently. Maya, no. I'm not suffering. I said, and it was true. I could feel everything, my own emotions, my own thoughts. But I could also feel the devourer's hunger and understand it wasn't malicious. It was just hungry. That's all it had ever been. hungry and willing to trade. The family's prosperity continues, I said, but the cost is distributed now, not concentrated in one person. Everyone pays a little. Everyone benefits a little. The equation balances. Uncle Richard shook his head. That's not how it works. The ritual requires a vessel. The ritual required a willing sacrifice who understood the full truth. I interrupted. No one's ever done that before. Every previous vessel was someone desperate or guilted into it. Someone who accepted without truly understanding. But I researched. I learned. I went into this with open eyes. That changed the terms. I could feel the truth of it. The devourer had been surprised because for the first time in centuries, someone had approached the pact not as a victim, but as a negotiator. And ancient entities, I was learning, could be negotiated with if you were willing to meet them on their level. I'm not empty, I continued. I won't hollow out. I'll live my life, and part of me will always be connected to this, to all of you. When you succeed, I'll feel it. When you suffer, I'll feel that too. I'm the bridge now, permanent and unchanging. But that means you can never. My mother stopped realizing. I can never fully disconnect, I finished. I'll never be completely alone. There will always be a part of me that's connected to the family, to the pact, to the devourer. But I'll still be me. That's the difference. Marcus approached slowly. His eyes full of emotion again met mine. Can you really live like that? I thought about it, felt the truth of my new existence settling into place. I never felt like I fully belonged anywhere, I said. Not in the family, not outside it, always halfway between. This feels right, like I finally found where I fit. You just imprisoned yourself, Uncle Richard said bitterly. No, I corrected. I chose a different kind of freedom. You just can't see it yet. The gathering ended shortly after. People left confused, disturbed, uncertain if the pact still held. It did. I could feel it, but it was different now. And so was I. 6 months later, I was back in my Brooklyn apartment. Life continued. I still worked at the nonprofit. I still went to yoga classes I hated and coffee shops I loved. I still dealt with subway delays and expensive rent and all the mundane frustrations of being alive in New York City. But I was different. And slowly, terrifyingly, I realized how different. The family's luck had evened out. Uncle Richard's company faced normal competition. Jennifer made decisions that were logical rather than miraculously favorable. My father's law firm won some cases and lost others just like every other firm. But they were all still successful, still healthy, just normal. The supernatural edge was gone. I thought I'd won. Thought I'd found a loophole and saved everyone, including myself. Then the dreams started. Every night I dreamed of the other families. Not my family, other families scattered across the world. Chinese families, Korean families, Vietnamese families, African families, European families. Families I'd never heard of would never meet, all bound by their own pacts with their own entities. And I realized the devourer wasn't unique. There were dozens of them, hundreds maybe. Ancient things making ancient deals with desperate families. And I could feel them all now. connected through the strange space I inhabited, the bridge I'd become. One night I woke up choking. In the darkness of my room, I saw a woman standing at the foot of my bed. She looked like me, but older, maybe 40s, and she was smiling. "Hello, Maya," she said. "My name is Keiko Tanaka. My family has a pact too. Different entity, same structure. And you've become visible to all of us. Who are you?" "I was chosen 20 years ago. I'm a vessel just like you are. Or rather, just like you were supposed to be." She sat on my bed. I felt the mattress compress. She was real. "But you changed the terms. You absorbed the entity instead of serving it. And when you did that, you became something new. Something that every other pact-bound entity can sense." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "You're a beacon now, Maya. A light in the darkness that all these ancient things can see. And they're curious. They're hungry. They're wondering if what worked for your family's devourer could work for them too. Wondering if they could find someone like you. Or wondering if they could just take you. Take me. 47 entities have become aware of you in the last 6 months. I'm representing 12 of them. They want to meet you. They want to understand what you've become. They want..." She paused. "They want to merge with you like your devourer did. 47 ancient entities all channeling through one person. Can you imagine the power, the connections, the possibilities? I'd die. I'd be destroyed. Maybe. Or maybe you'd become something else entirely. Something that's never existed before." Her smile widened. "The families we represent are willing to pay handsomely for your cooperation. Money, influence, protection, anything you want. And if I refuse, then they'll try to take you anyway. You changed the rules, Maya. You exposed a vulnerability in the system. And now every entity bound to every family is going to want to exploit that vulnerability before someone else does." She stood up, heading for the door. "You have 1 week to decide. Then they start coming for you with or without permission." She vanished, literally dissolved into shadow. I sat in my bed, shaking, understanding finally what I'd actually done. I hadn't saved anyone. I hadn't broken the pact or found a loophole. I'd made myself into something new, something that every ancient, hungry entity on Earth could sense. I'd thought the worst-case scenario was serving as a vessel for one entity. But now I was facing the possibility of becoming a vessel for all of them. The family tradition wasn't over. It was just beginning. And I was at the center of something much older and more terrible than I'd ever imagined. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "We know what you are now, and we're coming, all of us. I should have just accepted the original terms."